Dun, 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 dun. Here we go. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to those of you who have been with us before on Capital Connection with MEC. I'm Conan Smith. I'm the CEO at the Michigan Environmental Council. And I am super excited to do a conversation today with one of my best friends in the world, Brad Garmon, former staffer, CEO himself here at the Michigan Environmental Council, before he looked to literally greener pastures. And he's over at the Department of Natural Resources now, running the Office of Outdoor Recreation Industry. So Brad, 20 years ago, isn't this crazy? Like you and I started working together 20 years ago.
19.
19. So one of the things that was so eye-opening to me when we were doing land use program work at MEC way back then is you had this idea about active living, that there was a change coming in our society, that more and more people were going to be going outdoors to bike and to hike, and that the economy was going to shift and that the state needed to move along with that. And I remember you created this thing called the Active Living Initiative and pulled together snowmobilers and equestrians along with mountain bikers and backpackers. And that feels like it was the naissance of this conversation that we have been having for the last 2 decades that is now culminating after much of your own hard work in an office dedicated to building outdoor recreation as a central part of Michigan's economy. And the numbers are extraordinary. So you've been on the job there since last fall at DNR, and the state's paying attention. People are paying attention to the industry. The industry's excited in ways that we haven't seen before. And all of a sudden, with the advent of the pandemic, people like you and me, we've talked about this, normal outdoorsy folks are rediscovering the outdoors in our own neighborhoods, right? Mm-hmm. Like it feels like you're in the midst of a big moment. And so I'm super excited for you. I'm super excited for Michigan. And I am excited for you to share with our group of listeners today on the webinar what you see in terms of the development of the office itself. But, you know, the thing that I love about conversations between you and me is our tactical stuff is about that much, right? And the strategy and the philosophy is like right there. So I want to talk about that, like how we build an ethos in Michigan about outdoor recreation that is inclusive, that is economically powerful, and that serves to protect the values and the character of the state of Michigan, which is basically what you told me we needed to do 20 years ago to bring it full circle. So here you are. Welcome.
Well, thanks for having me. And yeah, it was the Active Michigan Initiative.
Active Michigan, AMI. Right.
You're bringing back, yeah, a lot of memories. That was fun. I will say, I think, you know, a lot of this has to do with a culture, and a part of, I think, why I was so gung-ho 19 years ago to work on this issue and outdoor recreation and active living, active communities, is because I'm an out west kid. And, you know, I think you knew that. You hired me out of Kansas. But I was on the western edge of Kansas, and all my outdoors growing up was Colorado, New Mexico, my grandparents in Wyoming. I was in Yellowstone poking around with my dad when I was probably younger than my son, probably 7 or 8. And when I came to Michigan, like, and working with you, part of what excited me was that I felt like that potential was always here to function and behave like this outdoor mecca that was Colorado growing up, but in a different context, in a different culture, one that is water-based, that is water and woods. So I knew 2 things when I came here. I knew outdoor recreation was going to be important to me, and that Hemingway, one of my favorite writers, grew up bumming around and camping and hiking and fishing in Michigan. So I knew the potential was always here. and I just knew it was going to have to be modified a little bit to fit a different community and different state and a different outdoor culture than what we had out west. So that was always there.
To those of you on the webinar, I'm posting in the chat a little bit of background. And if you have questions as we go along, please post them using the Q&A button down at the bottom of your screen. You can also type into the chat itself, of course. I'll do my best to monitor that and get questions in front of Brad as we go along. Brad, why is this work been such a passion project for you? Like, not just your upbringing, but like you gravitated towards it immediately when you got here as like the future of Michigan.
You know, it's a good question. I think a lot of it has to do with just, you know, a belief that all of our communities are better, they're more cohesive, our relationships are better when they are grounded in something other than sitting in traffic all day. And I think that underscores a lot of what I think makes this work so interesting, and you know, unifying it, bringing it together, because it's such a, you know, diverse collection. When you say outdoor recreation, it means different things to different people, but there's something about it that is sort of universal. If we can get past the, like, how I recreate is different than how you recreate, and how my nature is different than your nature, and what I value is different than what you value, underlying all that is some connection to the outdoors and what people experience when they go outdoors that I think can bring us together in ways that really enable a lot of the other great sort of public policy, infrastructure investment, and things that make Michigan a better, more enjoyable, more economically viable place. But it starts with finding out those things that bring us together. And just a really quick example, this was to me so telling, because it was literally the weekend before I started this job. So back in mid-September of 2019, which was either 9 months or 900 years ago, depending on sort of how I feel in a day. But I did a ride. It was my first organized bikepacking ride. And it was up in the Pigeon River Country State Forest, organized by a great group called Pavement Ends. They're an event management, sponsored by Salsa Bicycles. And it was 70 miles over 2 days. So you camped out 2 nights, packing everything on your bicycle. So you're riding out through the middle of nowhere in the Pigeon River Country, sandy roads, crossing sort of washed out streams and all kinds of crazy stuff. But you camped at night together. And it was about 150 people on the bikepacking side. And we were in a private campground adjacent to the Pigeon River Country near Atlanta, I believe. But the great part was, like, we were doing that, 150 crazy biker people, and the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation was in the same campground on the other side of the restroom area, doing almost the exact same thing. And we were drinking, I think, Founder's beer out of a keg. They probably had bourbon, and they were sitting around, and everybody was giving away swag, you know, like they had the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation swag and tent. We had this salsa mountain bike swag, and we were giving it away and having fun. But the two groups really didn't have much to talk about. And that was what was funny. Like, we tried to interact a little bit, and a woman was telling me, one of the bike folks, that she tried to have a conversation. And the guy was like, well, you know, 70 miles on a bike with all your stuff, I guess if you're crazy enough to do that, then whatever. But they do. So how we recreated didn't match, but the fact we were out in a campground enjoying camaraderie, the outdoors, brought those worlds together. So a lot of my job now is finding those commonalities between bikers and hunters, and those different things that we have so much in common, but we've too often, I think, gotten tangled up in what we don't share. So
you've had, over the last 6 to 9 months now, the role of building out the economic engine behind this. Can you tell us a little bit about what that looked like in Michigan now, and where you'd like that to go, and how it's been changing over the last few years?
Yeah, and I mean, that story might have been long, but it was telling, because I think what the challenge is trying to figure out, like, what do we mean when we say the outdoor recreation economy? What are we actually talking about in terms of how are people employed? What are those companies? And getting a handle on that and really figuring out like, how is it different in Michigan than it might be in a Colorado or a Montana or a Vermont or a North Carolina. And it really is. So I spent a lot of time working with the Economic Development Corporation. That's part of the fun of this job, is that I'm physically housed in DNR and natural resources, but I have an MOU that connects me to the Economic Development Corporation. So I can lean some on their research capacity. And this is what they do. So if you take aeronautics or medical device technology, they have the tools to sort of figure out what are we talking about with any particular industry cluster. So we spent some time working with the outdoor recreation industry. And one thing we found is that Michigan, as you might expect, makes things. Like, we make a lot of stuff. We're a supply driven state. So a lot of our outdoor recreation jobs are sort of invisible to us. I came in expecting to see a lot of what we see as consumers, like the retail side. And there is a huge piece of that. We're one of the bigger states in terms of how much we spend buying outdoor recreation gear. Unfortunately, a lot of that gear we don't necessarily have a nexus with from the construction side or the design side. So a good example of this might be a company called American Expedition Vehicles. They're in Southeast Michigan, but all their product and everything, they're a Montana company. They do aftermarket equipment for off-roading and overlanding and that whole industry, which is booming. So they design the parts and you can bolt them onto your Jeep or your ATV or whatever. They designed them, and it's sort of a Montana origin story. But as soon as it came time to actually make that stuff, they brought the operation of the making of it to Michigan. And that's cool. Where so their manufacturing is here. And so I think there's going to be a lot of that where we figure out, like, I'm finding underneath the surface of the retail side where we see the products and we buy the sleeping bags or the, shoes or whatever it might be. A lot of it is, how do we bring that whole supply into Michigan so it's start to finish? So we have more design engineers in Michigan. We have expertise in lightweight materials and all this stuff from the autos. How can we make more of this stuff from the beginning, designing it, improving it? This industry is all about tweaking and making things better, whether it's skis or something else. We have the ability to do that. But right now, all that's happening somewhere closer to where people are actually recreating and downhill skiing. We want to bring that whole chain here so that all that back end stuff, the actual manufacturing, the supply chain, the formed plastic and all that stuff, is sort of the beneficiary of an increase in the front end of outdoor rec and design innovation. Okay. So that's where I'm focused right now. It's like figuring that piece out.
I'm really interested in that. One of the things you just said is like these companies tend to be more likely based in places where people are doing this stuff. And yet we know that in Michigan, we have some of the best outdoor recreation opportunities, the lakes, the cross-country skiing, the rivers to canoe on, the dunes to climb. And one of the things that you and I have talked about a little bit with regards to our reputation as an outdoor recreation state is we're darn quiet about it, right? Like we have more opportunity than many of the states that would be like your go-to outdoor places, like a Colorado, for example. You started to tell me about some of the comparative stats between our two states. Like, can you share that with our team here?
Well, I will, I agree with that. And I've heard that notion of Michigan, one of the goals I have is to elevate Michigan as an outdoor recreation lifestyle state. That's actually in my job description, which is really fun. Outdoor recreation lifestyle. And I think that might be part of it, is that we know that in Michigan. We know from the retail sales data that we're in the top 10 in terms of retail sales of outdoor gear. We are, fifth in terms of boating and fishing. We're huge. And that's the whole spectrum from, we make a lot of boats here. We do have that manufacturing here, and pontoons and speedboats. And we have the Great Lakes Boat Building School. We have that. So we're number 5 in boat and fishing in the country. But that honestly hasn't resonated beyond sort of the travel and tourism notion. Like, there is certainly a strong pure Michigan travel piece. What I'm trying to do is then connect that to the industry values to say, we are a place that if you wanted to work in the outdoor industry, that there is a job for you here, and that you can live that great outdoor lifestyle that you think you have to move to Boulder for, you can live it here. And I found throughout the industry that that is a challenge in recruitment and talent, and it's at all levels. So we have some major companies here, like Merrill and Chaco, two really big brands in the outdoor space, and they similarly, like, struggle sometimes to convince people that you should come to move and live in Rockford, Michigan. We have great outdoor recreation instead of California or Colorado or Vermont. And so it's partly a brand thing. Partly we have to make that brand clear. So what I'm doing, and this is a really fun sort of tension that I feel in my job. On one hand, I want to elevate Michigan as a place that sort of the elite athletes can find challenge. That if you go to Colorado, it's because you want to test yourself and you want adventure. And we have to convince people that here in the Great Lakes State, you can do that. And I found examples of that, such as the Margie Gessick mountain bike event that takes place up in the UP. Todd Paquette and that crew, like that, elite level mountain bikers ride that race, and they call it, and I quote, the hardest mountain biking event in North America. Like, it is equivalent to Everest in terms of elevation change over 100 miles in the UP. And that's on a t-shirt now, because they similarly, like, people don't expect that. When I talk to reporters from Missoula or somewhere, they picture us like they picture Iowa or Indiana or something. And I have to convince them, like, actually, no, certain parts of Michigan are as elite and challenging and adventure bound. You can get lost, you can get hurt, you can do all this stuff. That's one of my goals. But 180 degrees different from that, I'm trying to make it clear that Michigan is also completely different than that, and that our outdoor recreation is accessible and it's enjoyable and it's close to home, and that you don't have to be a performance elite athlete with a $6,000 bike and a complete closet full of spandex in order to go out and enjoy it. You can just go for a walk, and it will be inspiring and relaxing and good for your mental health. And so much of our recreation is close to home and close to urban centers where the population isn't necessarily looking for an elite test of your mettle kind of outdoor recreation. They're looking for a walk in the park. They're looking for nature. And so those two tension points are part of what I think I'm trying to knit together and convince the industry that, yes, all the advantages of a Colorado or a Utah are here if you're into the high-end performance side, but we're also completely different in that we're more diverse. Our user base is probably larger because we do span everything from deer hunting to sort of the paid linear trails that you just do for fitness and recreation. And that side is something we're really good at. And those two things, I can knit them together, but it's sort of it's somewhat at odds sometimes to convince people that we have both of those and that they make sense in one context.
One of the things that we've discovered over the course of the pandemic is that outdoor recreation is critically important to our mental health, right? And we've seen all sorts of different kinds of activities and expression of that need. Like you say, from walking in the park to finding, like, I have this little running route where I go past a basketball court, and there's like one guy out there, right? Like, because you can't, during the height of the pandemic, like, you had to stay socially distanced and doing the passing a basketball around. But like, you can tell just by like the concentration that he has, like, this is his mental space, right? Being outside on that court, like putting that ball through that hoop. We're experiencing as a culture a rediscovery, a renaissance around what it is to be outside and to recreate. But it has not, in Michigan, always been, the wild places haven't always been universally welcoming or accessible. Oof. And that's a challenge for our state. Like, are you working in that space with people trying to overcome some of those barriers?
Yeah, in fact, and so is the industry. And that's part of what I love about my job, is sort of by elevating this, the more innovative, progressive wing of the outdoor industry, the things they care about most are things that we care about, like climate change, the Protect Our Winters Coalition, and diversity, equity, and inclusion, and recognizing that it's more than just marketing. It's more than just saying, like, oh, people of color, you're welcome outside. There are real challenges in Michigan and everywhere with culture, history, and current racism that can make these unsafe. We saw examples in Michigan, we saw examples in Indiana of really threatening situations that arise when people of color are interacting in an outdoor setting. So yeah, it's a space I'm working at. I found some really great partners in Michigan. There's a show, Color Out Here, came out of WGBU's PBS station with Alice Lynn that I think is wonderful, and I'm working with her on exploring some of those cultural and contextual barriers to diversity and inclusion that are real and something we really have to address. So yeah, that's a big piece of my job, and luckily, a lot of the industry is headed that same way too. Another Michigan brand, Moose Jaw, which is born out of here. They've got, I think, 10 or so retail, brick and mortar retail stores, but about 90% of their sales are online now. They were purchased by Walmart.com. But what Owen and Comfort and those folks are working on really is about diversifying the outdoors. So again, a Michigan company in the outdoor space leading a national conversation and being really relevant to diversity and inclusion that a lot of people in Michigan don't even know it's here, don't even know it's headquartered here. And that's a lot of it too. It's just growing and supporting the industry and making people aware of the good work and the kind of paths we have to a larger audience in the outdoor recreation space.
I want to apologize to everyone for the camera mishap there. We have a big old storm coming through Ann Arbor and the wind just took off. I don't know if you saw, my room got like really dark for a minute, and it blew my camera right off the off the post here. Brad, one of the things that Moose Jaw is doing is the CEO pledge, working with the outdoor industry to get a pledge around diversity action, which includes hiring, right? Like making sure that the workforce at the executive level on down is as diverse and representative of the people that it serves as it can be. That's no joke. Like there's real opportunity there. There's already, just in the state of Michigan, more than 100,000 people working in this industry, right? Like it's a growing space with significant opportunity.
Yeah, and that's one of the fun things is sort of parsing out which pieces of the industry to focus on and how do we focus on the workforce needs and inclusion in the workforce. So for example, Merrill, I mentioned earlier, Janice Tennant was a recent hire in sort of their marketing, and she's an African-American woman. And I think putting her in charge of the brands of Merrill shows exactly where this industry is trying to do that we need to not only say, welcome to our outdoors, like me as a white guy, like welcome to my outdoors, Colorado version. It's more like, what does the outdoors look like through a different set of eyes, through a different cultural experience? And that's what I think will enable the industry to be relevant to everybody. And that's putting people in charge and putting people in positions of authority and decision-making that don't look like the traditional outdoorsman. And I think there's a lot of great opportunity to do that in Michigan because we are a more diverse state. We do look more like America sometimes than maybe a Utah might right now. No offense, Utah, but it's a place where diversity is gonna be a big piece of what we do in the outdoor recreation industry as we grow, and a great opportunity to hire and promote and see people with a different lens on the outdoors put into positions where they can share that with us and show us the outdoors from a different perspective.
Brad, one of the questions that's popped up is from a new Michigander, single woman of color, lives in the Flint Grand Blanc area, and she's asking, where can I go for a nature walk and feel comfortable, feel safe, understanding there are no guarantees, but like, how are we ensuring that people of all backgrounds can have those experiences of being in the outdoors where they are safe and they do feel welcome?
Yeah, it's something I'm working on because it's, part of the fun of being housed in the Department of Natural Resources is there is an army at work on behalf of your natural resources at the Department of Natural Resources. And Alexis Horton is their DEI specialist that they recently hired. And she lives and breathes this stuff on a daily basis, because I think the biggest takeaway for me is to acknowledge that it is real. This isn't about like saying, oh, nature's colorblind and it's welcoming to everyone. We really have to acknowledge that there's real risk. So one of the things I've been really excited about working on lately, along with MEC and others, is the Recreate Responsibly campaign. And it's a national campaign born out of Washington, but big companies like REI and others are pushing it. But as they ran up into the 4th of July weekend, the coalition added a 7th platform around not just wearing masks and keeping socially distant, but looking out for each other and looking out for an inclusive environment, making sure that we can make those spaces together, we can make them safer and more welcoming. So I think that was a big addition to those Recreate Responsibly principles, something I think the more we can get behind, the better. Michigan companies are leading on that coalition too, like Merrill and Chaco and others. So we're talking about that. And I'm talking to Alice, Lynn, and others about like sort of ambassadorship into the outdoors and really acknowledging that for now, to go out safely, if you're a person of color, depending on where you want to go, it might just be safer to go as a group and make sure you're not out there alone and that you don't find yourself unsure whose ownership am I on? Is this still state land? Did I cross into private land? It can get awkward in Michigan. Sometimes the signage is a little less than clear. So that's my simple thing right now is like, let's team up. We can be socially distant and do it together and support each other as we welcome more. This is an onboarding moment for outdoor recreation. And maybe the largest onboarding moment for new users that we will ever see. So let's make this moment one where we help each other and we are inclusive and sort of letting people come into it where they are. Gazelle Sports is another one. I'll close. Like they recently shared some numbers with me. About 80% of their online sales of running shoes and things like that are to new users since this pandemic started. And that is representative across the board, whether it's bikes or kayaks. New people are going outside who haven't been there before, wanting to find that. Welcome to Michigan. And I think we all need guides. We all need mentors and we need a team to sort of support each other to make sure that we're doing it together and that we make that first experience a great one so that the second experience is one that they begin to move deeper into the outdoors and deeper into the experience of outdoors.
I had a person remind me recently that like the importance of that first experience being great is remarkable because the second and third experiences often aren't, right? Like, yes. But you have that first one in your mind. You're always trying to re-achieve the glory of that first moment. I got two related questions I think are really good, that are fantastic, and it'll be a nice way to wrap up. They're about local identity. So have you thought about how place-based identity around outdoor recreation helps to brand Michigan and bring diverse stakeholders into the same space? And how can local groups like fly fishing clubs support the efforts of the office?
Yeah, to the first one, I think a lot of what I'm trying to do is build a brand, and I'm close to actually launching a brand of the outdoor office. But just as a notion of what I've been working with others to try to figure out is what is Michigan's, calling card in the outdoor recreation landscape. If we're going out to the giant outdoor retailer show in Denver when it reopens, what are we putting on the table as Michigan? And I think a lot of it is going to be, I think about it as the lifestyle. In Michigan, it's partly the outdoors and the forests and the dunes and the trout streams that make this state so great. But it's also the great beer and it's the camaraderie. And so like there's a lifestyle that goes with the outdoors that is uniquely Great Lakes. And that's what I'm trying to like tap into so that we're not trying to compete head to head with the Utah and Zion National Park. We are our own thing and we are a uniquely Michigan Great Lakes sort of brand. And I'll work with Wisconsin and Minnesota to help sort of build that. But that's why I think of us as not just the Midwest. I think of us as the Great Lakes region. And I think that's going to be a calling card for us as we build out the outdoor brand. And so in terms of working with me, or I think right now, it's a lot of what I do is very business focused. Like I'm trying to support scientific anglers and we're talking about the fly fishing and stuff, working with Brad Beefus up in Midland and sort of growing and figuring out what they need and across the board on the retail side. But for user groups, I consider everybody in this space sort of a member of the outdoor recreation economy, whether you're nurturing a place, or you're providing access and education to teach people how to do it. It's all part of what makes the economy of outdoor recreation work. So right now, the biggest, I think, engagement opportunity is around the Recreate Responsibly Coalition and working with me to sort of build that coalition and as a nexus point for all of us to share some platforms together about how to be in this moment outdoors, but do it safely and in an inclusive, welcoming way is what I'm really focused on as sort of a moment that we can all come together and work in a COVID and diversity landscape.
Jonathan Jarosz from Heart of the Lakes posted links in the chat to Recreate Responsibly. So for those of you on the webinar who want to get in on that with Brad and MEC and Heart of the Lakes and others, jump in through that link there. Brad, we're at our time, and there are actually several more questions, so I'll hit you up afterwards and see if we can answer and get back to folks about some of the questions that they posted separately. Thanks so much for talking to us. There's so many people involved in this and so many questions. I feel like we might need to have you back for something a little more in depth.
I'm happy to do it. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of deep stuff and a lot of companies I didn't get to mention that I would love to, such as Rivian, sustainability, electric adventure vehicle. Talking to them yesterday. Some really cool stuff going to come out of that. So I think there's a lot of nexus between the environment, sustainability, outdoor recreation, diversity that we can keep working. So thanks for having me. It's been fun.
Well, thank you. And thanks for the work that you're doing. It's super impressive as always. And you know that at MEC and amongst MEC's allies and friends, you have allies and friends. So as the office is trying to reach into new directions, or if it's struggling in any place, there are 50 people on this webinar alone who I know are all eager to help you be successful and to see this part of Michigan's economy grow and thrive. So Brad, thanks again. Everybody on the webinar, thanks for joining us. If you want to get in touch with us, up on the screen is our website. You can reach out to me directly, and we'll hook you up with Brad and with all of our outdoor recreation work as well. Look forward to seeing you all next time around. Cheers.
Thanks, Conan.
Thanks, guys.